Okay, I think that we are now ready. Thank you all once again for your patience. I'm going to ask my colleagues from the tech team to please officially start the webinar. Thank you all once again for your patience and apologies for this slight delay. We were missing one person, hoping she will manage to connect soon. Thank you, and please, Maria, feel free to start the webinar now. Hello, welcome everyone, and apologies to all of those of you who were in the waiting room. My name is Laura Tejero, and I am part of Amnesty's International Interpretation Unit. I will be speaking in English. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this event. Before we officially start with the session, I wanted to kindly remind everyone that this is a virtual multilingual meeting being held with remote simultaneous interpretation. Today we have live interpretation into English. Function, please make sure to click on the interpretation button on the globe icon you will find on the Zoom toolbar. Please click on the language you need to listen to. Today, as we were mentioning, we have live interpretation into English, French, and Spanish. Interpretation into other languages is always a few seconds behind, so we kindly ask you to be patient, and we thank you in advance for giving the time to interpreters to interpret. We kindly ask you to take a couple of minutes to rename yourselves as well. To do so, please place your mouse over your image icon and click on the three dots on the top right and click on rename. There you can include your name, your surname, your role, entity, or country. Now we would like to go over some housekeeping. On the one hand, we kindly ask panelists to please keep your microphones muted when you're not speaking, and please do stay in the language you will be speaking in. Please do select from the drop-down menu that you will find, as we were saying, in the Zoom toolbar. If, for example, you're planning on speaking English, please do select that very same language from the drop-down menu from the beginning. Speak slowly, clearly, and loudly for interpreters to be able to understand you properly. And please do remember to allow for a brief pause between speeches to make sure the interpreters can finish the rendition. The exchange of the floor among panelists will be paced by the moderator. We kindly ask you to wait for the moderator to invite you to take the floor as and when needed. You will then be able to open your microphone in Zoom. On the other hand, if you're joining as an attendee, please use the questions and answers function on Zoom to ask as many questions as you may have. You will find it at the bottom on the screen under Q&A. Please note that interpretation will be fully functional all throughout the meeting. If there are any technical issues, we will let you know. If you cannot hear the interpretation and we have not indicated that there is a technical problem, there might be an issue your end, we kindly ask you to please contact me via private chat on Zoom, and we will do our best to help you solve the problem. Lastly, please note that this meeting is being recorded. Hopefully you've already seen the announcement on screen, and it's also being live streamed on ISHR's YouTube channel. I take this opportunity to thank the team of interpreters supporting us today, as their contribution is key to guarantee language diversity and inclusion. Many thanks to all of you for your collaboration and patience today. We are now officially starting the event. It is my pleasure to now give the floor to Amnesty's Secretary General, Agnès Calamard, for her welcome remarks. Over to you, Agnès.
Thank you very much, Laura. Thank you everybody. It's a pleasure to be joining you. Excellencies, friends, colleagues, I'm honored to welcome you on behalf of the International Service for Human Rights and Amnesty International to the 2022 Human Rights Council pledging event. Today's event provides a candidate for membership to the Human Rights Council the opportunity to present their vision for membership and the priorities they will work on if elected. And it is also an opportunity for others to question candidates on their human rights record and pledges. I would like to start by extending my special thanks to the two permanent missions who are sponsoring this event, Argentina and Luxembourg, and we extend our heartfelt thanks to Ambassador Maria del Carmen Squef, who may have joined us, and Ambassador Olivier Mess, present here today, as well as their teams who have made it possible to organize this event. I'm also very grateful to Mr. Craig Mokhiber, Director of the New York office of the OHCHR, who will be moderating this event. So thank you very much. We have been organizing that event with the ISHR for the last 12 years. I think that is a good indicator of the importance and the success of that initiative. And we're delighted that this year we have 11 candidates who are joining the event, and that all the regions of the world are represented. As you probably know, elections to the Human Rights Council are not always as competitive as we would like them to be for a body of that importance and for a role of that importance. Too often, closed slates are the norm. But we do welcome the competitive nature of at least two groups, Asia Pacific and Latin American Caribbean groups. And we strongly encourage other regions to be inspired by their example. Over the next 2.5 hours, we will have an opportunity for all of the candidates and others to dialogue and to have a discussion between member states and civil society. So that is an important exercise in transparency and accountability, and indeed it's an important step towards the realization of the Human Rights Council mandate. The Council depends on its members and on their readiness to fully implement its mandate as set out in the General Assembly Resolution 60251. I think it's fairly commonplace to say and to insist that the responsibilities of the Council have never been more crucial. Yeah, maybe people said that 10 years ago. I think, however, that the years we are confronting and the decade, in fact, we are confronting is in many ways daunting. We are looking at an array of existentialist challenges: international war, climate change, increasing inequalities, nowadays food crisis, and many more, all of which have the potential to bring the world to its knees. And all of them, the Human Rights Council must be prepared to address if it is to fulfill its role and its mandate at a time when it is so required. Global human rights leadership has never been more crucial for all of us. For this role, this mandate to be fulfilled, the members to the Council will need to have an understanding of the historical context within which they are working, operating, acting, and its many challenges. They will need to demonstrate courage, vision, unpopularity to be accepted. They will need to be prepared to accept scrutiny of their own human rights situation, of that of their country. They will need to
And OHCHR is very pleased to have been associated with it for several years now, and I'm very delighted to be able to continue this tradition today. An opportunity for dialogue between stakeholders and an important exercise in transparency and accountability. Let me especially thank the 11 candidates who accepted the invitation to join us today. They are Afghanistan, Belgium, Chile, Costa Rica, Georgia, Germany, Kyrgyzstan, the Maldives, the Republic of Korea, Romania, and South Africa. I want to applaud their willingness to engage and to thank them for approaching the exercise in a spirit of transparency and accountability. Now, on the subject of transparency, all 18 candidate states were invited to join us today, but 8 candidates either declined to participate or simply failed to respond to the invitation. They were Algeria, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Morocco, Sudan, Vietnam, and Venezuela. Let me say a few quick words on the format of today's event. In the opening segment, each candidate has been asked to outline in 90 seconds what they hope to achieve through their membership, both at the national level and at the international level. In the second segment, we'll open the floor for questions from the audience, from all of you. And questions will be taken both from Twitter, and let me tell you now to please use the hashtag #HRCpledging. That's hashtag #HRCpledging. We'll also take questions from the Zoom Q&A function. And we will be taking questions directed generally to all the states, as well as questions directed to specific individual states. And that will include, importantly, both those who are participating in today's event, but also those who are not joining us today. Questions posed through the Q&A function can also be liked by other audience members. So please do feel free to like the questions that are posed by others in the event, so our organizers can get a sense of which questions are of the most interest to others who are following us today. Now, in the second segment, to ensure the greatest opportunity for engagement between candidate states and the audience, we urge candidates to please be short and concise in your responses, not exceeding 2 to 3 minutes. If a representative exceeds 3 minutes in a response, I will gently remind you to please wrap up. I hope you'll allow me to do so because we do want to be able to get through the entire discussion today. And our aim really is to have a rich and dynamic discussion. And as there will be probably more questions shared than time allows, any questions that are shared that are not asked during this event will be collated and forwarded to the candidates and also posted online. So you will have a chance to have those questions answered as well. Now, before we turn to the candidate states for their opening remarks, I want to give the floor to our co-sponsors for a few opening remarks as well. So now let me invite Her Excellency, Ms. Maria del Carmen Squef, who is the permanent representative of Argentina to the United Nations here in New York, to make some brief opening remarks on behalf of the co-sponsors. Ambassador Squef, you do have the floor.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for the invitation. Good morning, everyone, dear colleagues. First of all, I would just like to thank Amnesty International and the International Service for Human Rights for inviting the Argentine mission to take part in this very important event. In addition, it is an honor to be a co-sponsor along with Luxembourg. I would also like to welcome the distinguished states which are candidates to the Human Rights Council. Thank you so much for joining us here online, and thank you so much. We are very interested to hear your presentations. Indeed, Argentina has been a candidate to the Human Rights Council in the past, and we have had the opportunity of taking part in previous editions of this same event. And that also allowed us to share our commitments and our objectives as a member of this fundamental United Nations organization. The aim, of course, is to strengthen human rights throughout the entire world. Allow me also to share a few words when it comes to the history of my country and the crucial role of the Human Rights Council. Argentina, in 2022, has presided, moderated rather, the most important human rights organization. And this is a long trajectory since we became a democratic country in 1983, and we incorporated the human rights into our identity as a nation. We mainstreamed them into our identity and into our profile as a nation. We have always worked in favor of constructive dialogue so as to work collectively in order to develop the international texts relating to human rights throughout the whole world. A very clear example of this is the work carried out with the Convention for the Protection of All People Against Forced Disappearances. This is a convention which Argentina has promoted actively along with France. We promoted this within the Council of Human Rights, and this is the product of a fight for human rights, which has been ongoing for many decades. The fight against dictatorship was actually led by the families of victims and by other human rights organizations, and they also showed great courage. And they gave the greatest example of the exercise of human rights in a democratic and selfless way. The demonstrations at the Plaza de Mayo in Argentina are an example to everybody else. And with that example, I would also like to point to the essential role of the Human Rights Council when it comes to advancing the progressive development of international law relating to human rights. And the Council, therefore, is an area in which Argentina, as well as France, have been working on this crucial instrument, the instrument against impunity. And thanks to that, more countries have ratified the convention. Dear colleagues, the Resolution 6021, which established the creation of the Human Rights Council, in its preamble, forces us and obligates us to, and I quote, reaffirm our commitment to reinforce human rights mechanisms, the human rights mechanisms of the United Nations, so as to ensure the enjoyment of human rights on the part of all peoples around the world, end of quote. That is a very great responsibility, and we should not lose sight of the opportunity to consolidate a universal system which is strong, which is effective and efficient, and which is impartial and neutral as well. This system promotes fundamental rights, and it privileges dialogue and cooperation. It puts the emphasis on dialogue and cooperation. It is absolutely fundamental to have this understanding in our minds so as to help this organization to fulfill its mandate. By way of conclusion, I would also like to reiterate the fact that truth and justice are the principles which guide the democratic institutions of Argentina, as well as the respect for diversity and inclusion. These are also extended to our foreign policy. That has allowed us to be part of the Human Rights Council in a privileged position as a country which experienced a great tragedy and which found freedom again as a society. Gradually, we have widened the ambit of rights for absolutely everybody. Argentina has presided over the Council with Federico Viejas, our ambassador, who is actively working in a very committed way to strengthen the universal system of human rights. His objective has been to promote human rights. Along with the mission of Luxembourg, we would once again like to thank all of the candidates for their presence here in this virtual event, and we wish them all the successes in the world for these elections. Thank you once again to the organizers of the event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Squef, for that opening. Let me give a quick apology to everyone who's been following on the YouTube live stream for a slight technical glitch. But thanks also to our tech team for getting that back up and running. Hopefully, it'll be smooth sailing from here on in. Okay, we're now going to begin our discussion with the candidates. Each candidate was sent the same question in preparation for the event. And that question was, what does the candidate state hope to achieve through its Human Rights Council membership, both at the national level and the international level? Candidates, just a reminder, you have 90 seconds to answer. And given the number of interventions that we need to facilitate today, I really urge each state to please stay within the time limit. I will remind you if you have exceeded the time and ask you to wrap up quickly. We're going to proceed mostly in alphabetical order. One state will be joining slightly later, but the rest will be alphabetical, which brings us first to giving the floor to the distinguished representative of Belgium, Ms. Veronique Justin, Director of Human Rights at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Let me say that Belgium has ratified or acceded to 16 out of the 18 core international human rights treaties and their protocols, and has also issued a standing invitation to the UN Special Procedures, and was also previously a council member in the 2009 to 2012 and 2016 to 2018 terms. Ms. Justin, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon from Brussels. I really want to thank the International Service for Human Rights and Amnesty International for organizing this event and giving us the opportunity to engage with stakeholders today. By aspiring Human Rights Council membership, Belgium hopes to contribute to a dynamic and effective council that can fulfill all aspects of its mandate. Belgium will build its action around 4 thematic areas of special importance to us. First of all, we will seek to strengthen accountability and the rule of law, which are essential to turn human rights into a reality for everybody. As the Council is not able to fulfill its mandate without participation of civil society and human rights defenders, promoting civic space and protecting human rights defenders will also be at the center of our attention. Thirdly, enhancing equality and countering discrimination will be another key concern and element of action. In this context, we will pay particular attention to the situation of women and girls. Finally, guided by the principle of leaving no one behind, we will pursue to promote all human rights, civil and political rights, as well as economic, social, and cultural rights, and we will try to demonstrate their indivisibility and interdependence. Of course, we cannot and will not act alone, but in dialogue and cooperation with other UN member states and civil society. And finally, no human rights country has a perfect human rights record. Neither does my own country, Belgium. But we are convinced that membership of the Council will serve as a mobilizer to do better at the national level. Thank you.
Thank you very much also for staying within the time limit, according to my stopwatch here. Much appreciated. Next, I would like to invite the distinguished representative of Chile, Mr. Tomás Pascual, the Human Rights Director in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to take the floor. And I'll say that Chile has ratified or acceded to 17 out of the 18 core international human rights treaties and their protocols, and has issued a standing invitation to the UN Special Procedures, and was previously a council member in the 2008 to 2011, 2011 to 2014, 2018 to 2020 terms. Mr. Pascual, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. We are grateful to Amnesty International and the International Service of Human Rights and the representations of Argentina and Luxembourg for the opportunity they provided us. Chile gives great importance to civil society organizations. We strongly believe that human rights are indispensable. 85% of the population participated in a national referendum last Sunday in Chile. And the result of this is that we showed that people were free to vote, and the result is also a change, a shift in paradigm, which changed the political engagement of the country after the pandemic. Our engagement is to shed more light, which means to work where it is the hardest for human rights, and therefore to go where it is hardest to reach people. We're all working together with the civil society's organizations. This is the right way when we're talking about human rights, and this will allow us to strengthen our system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well, Ambassador. Getting a signal that you're not getting my audio. Let me just confirm. Yes, I think you can hear me now. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Pascual. Next, I want to invite the distinguished representative of Costa Rica, His Excellency Ambassador Christian Guilherme Fernandez, Vice Minister of Multilateral Affairs, to take the floor and to tell you that Costa Rica has ratified or acceded to 17 out of 18 core international human rights treaties and their protocols, and has issued a standing invitation to the UN Special Procedures, and was previously a council member in the 2011 to 2014 term. Ambassador Guilherme Fernandez, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Hello from San Jose, Costa Rica. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all and thank Amnesty International and the organizers, including the representatives of Argentina and Luxembourg, for this opportunity. Costa Rica was a great actor in terms of human rights in our history and a pillar of human rights for the United Nations. We can say that since 1993, we have supported and the creation of the Human Rights Council with the rest of Latin America and Caribbeans, and we have actively participated in the processes to create clauses for the agreements and the forums. We have had plenty of activities and initiatives that were put forward by Costa Rica considering our engagement for human rights. The only way we can have a peaceful society and achieve the objectives of the Agenda 2030 is to respect human rights. And the international community's objectives are fundamental and are very dear to Costa Rica. Another fundamental aspect on which we would be working is funding the High Commissioner. Thank you very much. And we remain available for any question you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you also for staying within the time limit. Very much appreciated. Now I would like to invite the distinguished representative of Georgia, His Excellency Ambassador Alexander Mezoradze, Permanent Representative of Georgia to the United Nations Office and other international organizations in Geneva, to take the floor. Georgia has ratified or acceded to 15 out of the 18 core international human rights treaties and protocols, and has issued a standing invitation to UN special procedures, and was previously a council member in the 2016 to 2018 term. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Firstly, let me thank the organizers for this opportunity. Global developments once again confirm the importance and necessity of the work of the HRC. Unfortunately, we continue to witness blatant violations of human rights stemming from Russia's aggression against Ukraine, as well as worsening human rights, humanitarian and security situation in the Russia-occupied regions of Georgia. As a member of the HRC, Georgia will focus its efforts on addressing these human rights violations. Georgia remains firmly committed to further promoting the protection and respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. As a candidate, Georgia has already made the voluntary pledges and commitments to continue further strengthening cooperation with human rights mechanisms, in particular, stay committed to strengthening the efficiency of the Council, continue fruitful cooperation with the special procedures, further uphold universality of UPR, engage in the review process, promote the wider engagement of national human rights institutions, NGOs, and civil society representatives, including boosting the role of the parliamentarian within this process. As a member of the group of Friends of National Mechanisms and Implementation, reporting and follow-up, we will continue raising awareness about the importance of national mechanisms and exchange good practices in this regard. As a member of the HRC, Georgia will focus its efforts to further contribute to the comprehensive implementation of the Council's mandate in the close cooperation with all stakeholders, including NGOs, to protect and promote the rights of the most vulnerable groups, with special emphasis on women and girls, children and persons with disabilities, minorities, IDPs, and conflict-affected people. Promote mainstreaming the environmental dimension into human rights and the rights-based approach to environmental protection. Enhance awareness on environmental challenges and on the enjoyment of the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Contribute to international cooperation to harness the potential of new technologies and mitigate technologically enabled threats to human rights and democracy. Support universal participation in the work of the HRC. We strongly believe that Georgia's representation in the HRC will give an additional positive impetus to the work of the Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for those remarks, Ambassador. Now I would like to invite the distinguished representative of Germany, Her Excellency Ambassador Katharina Stasch, Permanent Representative of Germany to the United Nations in Geneva, to take the floor. Germany has ratified or acceded to 16 out of the 18 core international human rights treaties and protocols, has issued a standing invitation to the UN special procedures, and was previously a council member in the 2006 to 2009, 2013 to 2015, 2016 to 2018, and 2020 to 2022 terms. Ambassador Stasch, you have the floor.
We're facing this is someone from ISHR. There's some technical issues that we're trying to resolve on the back end. So next speaker until we resolve this issue. Thank you.
Thank you for that technical advice. Does that mean that we should come back to Germany?
Yes.
Okay, we'll move to the next one and we'll come back to Germany when the technical issues are resolved. So in that case, let me give the floor to the distinguished representative of Kyrgyzstan, His Excellency Ambassador Omar Sultanov, who is the permanent representative of Kyrgyzstan to the United Nations in Geneva. Kyrgyzstan has ratified or acceded to 14 out of the 18 core international human rights treaties and protocols, has issued a standing invitation to the UN Special Procedures, and was previously a council member in the 2009 to 2012 and the 2016 to 2018 terms. Ambassador Sultanov, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Kyrgyzstan supports the universal nature of human rights and does every effort to protect and promote human rights and fundamental freedoms. We regard the Human Rights Council as the indispensable global platform for human rights. Our main commitments to the HRC. At the national level, Kyrgyzstan will foster gender perspectives in public policy. We will further the system of functional education, women's access to justice, women's political leadership at all levels. We will strengthen the protection of children's rights, family support, and protection of children from the violence, ensuring the access of children to multilingual and inclusive education. We will strengthen our national human rights institution to enable them to act independently. If elected to the HRC, we'll focus on the rights of women, girls, persons with disabilities, migrants, and other vulnerable groups. We will actively participate in the work of the HRC with all partners and NGOs to protect and promote the human rights for all and everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Ambassador, now let me invite the distinguished representative of the Maldives, His Excellency Dr. Asim Ahmed, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the Maldives to the United Nations in Geneva, to take the floor. The Maldives has ratified or acceded to 14 out of 18 core international human rights treaties and their protocols. It has issued a standing invitation to the UN Special Procedures, and it was previously a council member in the 2010 to 2013 and 2014 to 2016 terms. Ambassador Ahmed, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Craig Mokiba, Director of OHCHR New York office, for giving me the floor. It is a great pleasure to participate in this dialogue today. I would like to begin by thanking OHCHR, Amnesty International, International Service for Human Rights, and the co-sponsors Argentina and Luxembourg for organizing this important event. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, the Maldives ratified its new constitution in 2008, laying the basis for a new democratic path based on a comprehensive Bill of Rights. Today, our development framework is firmly anchored in freedom, human rights, and inclusive governance, where respect for the rule of law and democracy are at the heart of our reform agenda. We remain committed to implement policies towards the realization of these ideals. We have learned greatly from our democratic journey and believe that our own experience will provide a valuable perspective that is beneficial to the Council, especially from the point of view of a small island developing state. We believe our membership in the Council will provide further impetus to strengthen human rights at home. It will also provide a valuable opportunity to further engage with and bring our experience to promoting human rights globally. In the true spirit of multilateralism, Maldives will continue to work towards a more inclusive, constructive, and diverse human rights council. We will continue to engage with UN treaty bodies and other human rights mechanisms to achieve gender equality, eliminate violence against women and girls, as well as empower youth as agents of change. We will intensify efforts to address climate change and promote sustainable development. Since 2006, Maldives has extended a standing invitation to all thematic special procedure mandate holders and has welcomed 4 mandate holders in the past 3 years. Ladies and gentlemen, as the permanent representative of the Maldives in Geneva, I assure you that Maldives will be a reliable partner that will spare no effort to promote and protect human rights and offer a voice for the voiceless, the marginalized, and the smallest countries to ensure that no one is left behind. I thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Ahmed. I would now like to invite the distinguished representative of the Republic of Korea, Ms. Ju-Yeon Kang, Director General for International Organizations of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to take the floor. The Republic of Korea has ratified or acceded to 11 out of 18 core international human rights treaties and protocols. It has issued a standing invitation to the UN Special Procedures, and it was previously a council member in the 2006 to 2008, 2008 to 2011, 2013 to 2015, 2016 to 2018, and 2020 to 2022 terms. Director General Kang, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I wish to thank the organizers and co-sponsors for convening this meaningful event. For the Republic of Korea, through our Human Rights Council membership, we hope to further promote the universal value of human rights at both national and international levels. Nationally, it would be another important opportunity for us to ensure full compliance with human rights instruments to which Korea is a party to, as well as to ratify additional human rights instruments. Throughout the years, we have been actively engaging with the UPR process and have incorporated the recommendations into our National Action Plan on Human Rights. Internationally, Korea will continue to place particular focus on promoting the rights of those in vulnerable situations, especially women, children, persons with disabilities, as well as migrants and refugees. At the same time, we wish to expand the frontier of human rights issues by leading discussions on local governments and promoting a human rights-based approach towards new and emerging digital technologies. Finally, given our experience in developing from a recipient to a donor country, we fully understand the challenges faced by many countries in their efforts to reach sustainable development and peace. Therefore, we will increase our assistance to developing countries to build relevant capacities for promoting human rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director General Kang. Next, I would like to give the distinguished representative of Romania, His Excellency Cornel Feruta, Permanent Representative of Romania to the United Nations in New York, the floor. Romania has ratified or acceded to 13 out of the 18 core international human rights treaties and protocols. It has issued a standing invitation to the UN Special Procedures, and it was previously a council member in the 2006 to 2008 and 2011 to 2014 terms. Ambassador Feruta, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I'll have to make a small correction. I'm still in Bucharest and addressing you in my capacity as State Secretary in the Foreign Ministry. I'm still to take up my new assignment in New York at the end of this week. But I'm joined by my colleagues in Geneva, our ambassador in Geneva, Ambassador Rusu, and my colleagues in New York, and also colleagues from Bucharest. I want to applaud this exercise. I think it's very meaningful, and we very much welcome this type of interaction. As we approach the membership in the Human Rights Council, and hopefully this will be sanctioned by the General Assembly, we do that with a sense of responsibility. I mean, in a way, we have a kind of festivistic approach. The state of human rights in general around the world and democracy, I think is quite serious and requires resolute action from all of us as individual nations, but also collectively within the Human Rights Council. I think at the beginning of this conversation, we are reminded about the very specific context we are currently operating. I myself addressed the Human Rights Council less than a week after the Russian aggression against Ukraine. And of course, this is a painful reminder for all of us, countries around the world in every corner, that we need to be determined and resolute in our actions, and we cannot take anything for granted. So as we are looking towards the Human Rights Council membership, we are actually do that with a sense of introspection as well. It's a good opportunity for Romania to promote at the international level the values that we believe in, the values that form the core of the rules-based international order, but also domestically to continue our dialogue and to make sure that there is no cutting corners. And in doing that, of course, we will be relying very much on the dialogue with civil society, both in Romania and abroad. And of course, we have, through our pledge, identified the key areas of interest. But I have to say that none of them would come at the expense of others, because we are in a business where all issues and all human rights and fundamental freedoms need to be promoted on their own merits. And there is a merit in each and every one of them. Overall, I think we would be focusing very much on fostering democracy, human rights and the rule of law, on protecting and promoting human rights of women and girls, which is one of the key areas in our work, and countering discrimination, all kinds of discrimination, and xenophobia and racism, and also enabling the freedom of expression. And while doing that, and I will close it, we will build on our national experience. And through the type of dialogue that we've been having with civil society, with different national relevant structures. So this is the type of sense of responsibility that we have when we approach this membership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for those remarks. Next, I would like to invite the distinguished representative of South Africa, His Excellency Matu Joyini, permanent representative of South Africa to the United Nations in New York, to take the floor. South Africa has ratified or acceded to 14 out of the 18 core international human rights treaties and protocols. It has issued a standing invitation to the UN Special Procedures, and it was previously a council member in the 2006 to 2007, 2007 to 2010, 2014 to 2016, and the 2017 to 2019 term. Ambassador Joyini, you have the floor.
Thank you, moderator. Let me first thank the organizers for inviting South Africa to share our pledge and vision. Candidature has also been endorsed by our continental body, the AU, and our theme is Together Building Back Better Through Human Rights. The fight for human rights was at the core of South Africa's anti-apartheid liberation struggle, which culminated in our freedom in 1994 and subsequently the adoption of our progressive constitution in 1996, which is anchored on the Bill of Rights. In 2006, South Africa demonstrated its commitment to the promotion, protection, and advancement of human rights and fundamental freedoms when it played an integral role in the UN processes that led to the transition from the ESWAL Commission on Human Rights to the Human Rights Council. Through our membership of the Human Rights Council, we commit to working with all partners to strengthen the UN human rights system and to ensure that human rights are respected, promoted, and protected everywhere, and that they are enjoyed by all without discrimination. Further, we hold a firm view, that there is no dichotomy between civil and political rights on the one hand, and economic, social, and cultural rights on the other. South Africa's approach affirms the Declaration on the Right to Development, which was the first international instrument that explicitly framed the approach that all human rights are equal and indivisible, and that people need to enjoy access to all these rights for the development of persons, communities, and societies. Amongst other things, we will promote, respect the integrity and dignity of the Office of the Human Rights Commissioner. We will support the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, including programs within the office aimed at advancing the cause of human rights globally. We will support the regional office in Pretoria, consistently and progressively continue to receive the special procedures and mechanisms of the Human Rights Council wishing to visit South Africa in keeping with their various mandates, and we will submit our country reports on time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Ambassador Joyini, much appreciated. Now let me invite the distinguished representative of Afghanistan, His Excellency Nasser Ahmed Andisha, permanent representative of Afghanistan to the United Nations in Geneva, to take the floor. Afghanistan has ratified or acceded to 11 out of 18 core international human rights treaties and protocols, and has issued a standing invitation to the UN Special Procedures, and it was previously a council member in the 2018 to 2020 term. Ambassador Andisha, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Thanks for the organizer for providing this opportunity. Your Excellencies, Afghanistan proudly served as a proactive member of the Human Rights Council between 2018 to 2020, including as the Vice President of the Council from the Asia Pacific Group. Our record for the past 2 decades in all areas of protection and promotion of human rights at the national and international level speaks for itself. We had one of the best pledging documents and won the trust of over 120 members in 2018. Afghanistan overwhelmingly delivered on its past pledges. However, now we can only renew our solid commitment to standing tall and unfettered for the recognition and protection of our people's fundamental rights. Today, Afghanistan is facing the world's human rights situation in all areas. Hence, today, instead of putting more pledges, we are asking you, the fellow members of the United Nations, to offer your pledges to our people and to elect us with good conscience. More than anyone else, Afghanistan deserves to be given a seat in the Human Rights Council. Afghanistan's candidature at this moment might seem somewhat unusual to some, but it is not. The de facto power holders in Kabul are amongst the worst abusers of human rights in the modern world. So for this very reason, Afghanistan delegations, not under the control of Taliban, can speak with authority on human rights issues on the basis of the lived experience of the people of Afghanistan. And it is what that the focus of human rights discourse should always be. This was recognized. This fact was recognized in April 2022 with the appointment of the Special Rapporteur on the situation of Afghanistan. Afghanistan's election to the Council would reaffirm and consolidate the commitment of the Council it made to establish the Special Rapporteur and also to have an urgent debate on the dire situation of women and girls in Afghanistan. Your Excellencies, to end with an historical anecdote, I wanted to remind you that in 1945, with Count Folke Bernadotte embarked on a mission to Nazi Germany on behalf of the Swedish Red Cross with a view of trying to save Jews from the last gasp of the Holocaust. He was quizzed by some officials that who he's representing. I'm finishing, just 1 second. He explicitly stated that he was acting on the wishes of people of Sweden. Afghanistan candidature to Human Rights Council is also on behalf of the people of Afghanistan. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Andishan. Now, I understand that Germany is having technical difficulties on their end, and unless I am corrected by our technical team, is still not able to connect effectively. So what I'm suggesting that we do is we will proceed with our agenda and we'll give Germany opportunity to take the floor when they have resolved their technical difficulties. And I'm hearing no correction from our technical team, so we will proceed accordingly. I want to thank all the candidates for their responses, for their excellent efforts to stay on time as well, and to tell all participants we have now concluded the first part of our discussion, with the exception of 90 seconds from Germany that we will accommodate when they have resolved their technical difficulties. So I want to now move to the question portion, the first question portion, questions posed to candidates from the audience. Now, in order to make the best use of time available, we're going to have to ask you to send through your concise questions to allow as many members of the audience as possible to contribute. Keep it short and sharp. Questions can be of a general nature, and they can be asked of all candidates, or they can be directed to a specific candidate if you prefer. And each candidate will be invited to respond to at least one question. And no candidate will be required to respond to more than 3 questions directed specifically to that candidate, so we can keep this fair. In your responses, candidates, you will have 2 to 3 minutes to respond, and we do ask you to try to stay as close to time as you possibly can. We have a number of questions from the audience in the first round, which I will now go to the live feed of questions that are coming in. And we see that one moment, please. There we are. So these are being collated for us by our team from the organizers. So before reading some of the specific questions received for specific states, first, a general question to all candidates has been received, this one from Human Rights Watch. They're asking, if elected as a Human Rights Council member, what actions are you ready to take on China, given the damaging report on government abuses in Xinjiang, including possible, quote, crimes against humanity, end quote? And what steps would you support to implement the High Commissioner's recommendations? That's a question from Human Rights Watch. Let me now go back to our candidates. And
apologies, Craig. Can you move to answering asking the first batch of questions for the first 5 states, and then the general question will remain as an option for any state to answer at any time?
Very good. Let's do that.
Thank you.
So we have, what I'll do is I will actually read the questions that are specific to individual members. I ask the member to take note of it until I have finished reading out the first set of questions that have come in, and then I will give you the floor to respond. The first is for South Africa. South Africa, this is from Defend Defenders. And the question is, will South Africa continue to abstain on country-specific resolutions that are put to a vote, especially item 7? Will South Africa continue to abstain on country-specific resolutions? I'll come to you in a moment, to South Africa, for an answer to that. Romania, we have a question for you as well. And the question is, what concrete actions will you provide in the face of increasing police crackdowns on protesters around the world? So Romania, what actions will you do to, will you promote to address police crackdowns on protesters happening around the world? And I'll give you time to prepare as I ask the Republic of Korea. Republic of Korea, a question from Civicus. There are concerns that those who advocate more robust inter-Korean communication and informal contacts may run afoul of the national security law. Article 7 of the National Security Law, which is a Cold War holdover, allows the government to selectively prosecute anyone who, quote, praises, incites, or propagates the activities of an anti-government organization, end quote. The question continues, this clause has been criticized by human rights groups who claim the government abuses the law to repress dissenting voices. In recent months, an activist was charged with spreading propaganda along the inter-Korean border, while civil society groups are concerned about a law that would affect net neutrality. Can you share how the Republic of Korea will ensure that these and other laws will not be misused to persecute human rights defenders? And while you're thinking about that, we have a question for the Maldives. This is from Accountability Maldives, and the question is, the Maldives only accepts certain terms of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Freedom of conscience, freedom of religion cannot be talked about, and as a result, the freedom of expression is also limited. Freedom of assembly and freedom to strike and protest is restricted in most of the capital city of Male, where a vast majority of citizens are forced to live. The country's parliament is pushing to make homosexuality a crime, even worse than it is now, and migrant workers are being arrested for practicing their own religion in private. What sort of positive contribution does a state with a track record like this hope to make in a multinational human rights council? So the question reads. While you're preparing your answer, I will go to Kyrgyzstan. There's a question from the OMCT, and the question is the government planning to make a declaration under Article 21 and 22 of the Convention Against Torture, recognizing the competence of the Committee Against Torture to receive and consider communications from individuals subject to its jurisdiction? That's the first round of questions. You may answer the individual questions directed to you, and any candidate state may also answer the general question that we started with from Human Rights Watch. If you indicate your interest in responding, I will give you the floor. Okay, I see we don't have the electronic function working to request the floor, so I'm going to simply proceed one by one and first offer the floor to Ambassador Sultanov. And again, I'm sorry if we could keep this to just a couple of minutes so we respect the time limits. Ambassador. I think you are.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
So could you please repeat the question? I'm not sure. So the question was from OMCT, right? According to the article 2122.
Yes, from OMCT, is the government going to make a declaration under Article 21 and 22 of the Convention Against Torture, recognizing the competence of the Committee Against Torture to receive communications from individuals?
Yeah, we are currently finalizing the internal procedures. So this is the short answer.
Thank you very much. I do see a raised hand, so let me respect and encourage the participants to use the raised hand function, which allows me to see who is ready to take the floor. We have a couple of them, so let me give the floor first to Christian Guilherme Fernandez.
Muchísimas gracias, señor moderador, y muchas gracias por la participación y por las preguntas. Yo me voy a ceñir desde el punto de vista de Costa Rica a la pregunta general sobre el caso de China. Y es que nosotros aspiramos a llegar al Consejo de Derechos Humanos para contribuir al fortalecimiento de los derechos humanos en el mundo, sin distinción alguna. Y sobre todo en un contexto que sabemos muy grave a nivel mundial, con unas crisis múltiples interrelacionadas, ya sea por la guerra en Ucrania, por la situación de derechos humanos en muchos de los países, pero también con las amenazas del cambio climático, la inigualdad y la pobreza. Y por eso la interrelación de los derechos humanos, de los derechos civiles y políticos, así como los DESC, es fundamental en todo el enfoque que tiene Costa Rica en su membresía para el Consejo de Derechos Humanos. Y es que nosotros, y en esto quiero referirme al caso específico de China, nosotros lo que queremos es en realidad avanzar con los mayores estándares de protección de los derechos humanos, pero con una capacidad y una vocación de diálogo con todos los estados. Y eso es lo más importante, utilizar absolutamente todo el arsenal de herramientas que ofrece el Consejo de Derechos Humanos para entablar un diálogo, para progresar en la promoción y protección de los derechos humanos como bienes públicos globales. Y es que eso tiene que ser, el Consejo de Derechos Humanos no tiene que ser un club de amigos. Tenemos que estar aquellos países que estamos convencidos de que el desarrollo se basa sobre el camino de la promoción y protección de los derechos humanos, pero también traer al seno del Consejo países que tienen otras visiones y que tienen otras realidades. No se puede seguir siendo un lugar de name and shaming. Tiene que ser un lugar donde haya name and shaming, pero también tiene que haber diálogo para conseguir los efectos, para obtener bienes públicos globales, que es lo que estamos persiguiendo. Muchas gracias, señor moderador.
Thank you very much. I'm also very happy to report that Germany has solved its technical difficulties. And as soon as we finish the replies to this round of questions, I will give Germany the floor for its 90-second introductory remarks. But let's for now continue through the responses here. And I will give the floor to South Africa. Ambassador.
Thank you very much, and thanks for that question from Defenders. South Africa considers every issue at hand based on its unique facts that are being presented in the resolution. And further to that, we always prefer and favor more dialogue on whatever issues is presented. And we act on the resolution based on the unique facts of that particular resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed to South Africa. I see we have also a reply from Chile. Mr. Pascual.
Muchas gracias por darme la palabra en relación con la pregunta vinculada a China. Si hay algo que destacar respecto del informe de la Alta Comisionada de los Derechos Humanos, es que justamente el
Human rights brought up many different aspects. One of the very important aspects is multilateralism, rather. There are a lot of factors here relating to legitimacy and the protection of human rights, and this report is very important for all of those reasons. We support the organs which protect human rights. We supported these organizations on the inter-American level and on the international level. We also produced a report a few years ago, and the recommendations were very important. They were based on various standards and the protection of standards. Chile completely trusts and commends the work of the High Commissioner, and we have historically done this, but we need to work with all of those states, people and actors which play an important role. We need to work with all. And the universal protection of human rights has to be at the center of all approaches and strategies. Independent of any consideration, we have done this as well. We have sought to protect human rights in the regional level, on the regional level and on the international level. And we see that the space to do this is in the Council of Human Rights. This allows us to work with states and share good practices and experiences that we have had. We have had many painful experiences as well. That is very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, a reply from Romania.
Thank you very much. Regarding the question on what Romania may do in the Human Rights Council to safeguard the freedom of assembly around the world, I think this is a crucial fundamental freedom, and we need to do our utmost to enable our own citizens to exercise their right of expressing support or dissent. This is part of the fabric of our democracies, and this is part of the checks and balances system in our own societies. And it's crucially important for all of us to make sure that we enable citizens around the world to express their views on our policies. And I think in the Council we will be working with all the member states and non-members of the Council to make sure that we strengthen the instruments enabling freedom of assembly, freedom of association, but also linked to the freedom of expression, which is also one of our key priorities for our mandate. I would say that this is one of the freedoms that should not be negotiable at all. It's a given for our democracies. Of course, no democracy is perfect, but making sure that we enable and we create the premise for these fundamental freedoms to be exercised fully, I think makes our democracies healthier and sounder. So this is the approach we're taking, and we would be vigorously promoting this particular matter in the Council, also building on our own national experience in Romania.
Thank you very much. Let me give the floor for a reply to the Republic of Korea.
First of all, thank you for the question, which is an important one that we actually get quite often. For the Republic of Korea, the National Security Act is critical for maintaining security in our country, given the unique situation in the Korean Peninsula. We are still technically at war, but given the concerns that this act can be misused, our courts have been interpreting and applying the provisions very carefully and in a restricted manner to ensure that the freedom of expression is not limited, as well as the other fundamental human rights that are guaranteed in our Constitution are fully respected. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. I think we have a reply from the Maldives.
Thank you. Also, thank you very much for the question. The Constitution of the Maldives expressly recognizes the importance of the freedom of expression, association, and assembly. And this has been a fundamental part of our democratic journey. The Constitution that was enacted in 2008 came on the back of public participation and engagement in the political life. The government recognizes the true value of these fundamental freedoms and enhancing the rule of law, promoting institutional accountability, and empowering our citizens to uphold these freedoms. The government is fully committed to providing the maximum space to provide for in the Constitution to exercise these freedoms. An important aspect of this is in 2018, the government repealed the Defamation Act, which was hindering freedom of expression and association. And especially it was hindering the work of the free media, which is a vital component of any democratic society. In the international level, we have also been engaging very robustly with the our partners in the promotion of these values. For example, at the 50th session of the Human Rights Council, the Maldives was a member of a group that brought forward the resolution on the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and of association, together with the other partners. These are some of the areas in which we continue to work to enhance the freedoms that are guaranteed by the Constitution. The law enforcement authorities, of course, continues to be vigilant in countering threats of harm, both in person and online platforms, towards human rights advocates and journalists. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have exhausted the first round of replies, so I'm going to, now that they have resolved their technical difficulties, give the floor to the representative of Germany, because they didn't have an opportunity to do their 90-second initial comment. And then we're going to come back to another round of questions. And in that second round of questions, I should tell you that I'm not going to be as gentle. Here, what we're going to do is give you one question at a time so we can get your response. You won't have as much time to prepare yourself. But I do want to, in fairness, give an opportunity to Germany. So let me just introduce. I have to scroll all the way back to the beginning here. So Germany is represented by Her Excellency Katharina Stasch, former representative of Germany to the United Nations. In Geneva, Germany has ratified or acceded to 16 out of 18 core international human rights treaties and their protocols, and has issued a standing invitation to the UN Special Procedures. It was previously a council member in 2006 to 2009, 2013 to 2015, 2016 to 2018, 2020 to 2022. Ambassador Stasch, you have the floor now for 90 seconds.
Thank you very much for organizing this event, and certainly thank you for your patience. As you said, I'm Katharina Stasch, the German ambassador to the UN in Geneva and currently Vice President of the Human Rights Council. And next to me is Antje Lennartse, our ambassador to the UN in New York, who has also served as a Vice President to the Human Rights Council. The promotion and protection of human rights is one of the 3 pillars of the UN system, and we certainly want to treat it as such. And we do believe in the universality of human rights. Now, what do we hope to achieve in a renewed Human Rights Council membership? Let me highlight 3 points. First, we have used our vice presidency to promote the crucial role of civil society and NGOs in the Human Rights Council. And this is certainly true also when it comes to the participation of NGOs in the sessions of the Human Rights Council. And we will continue to engage in this respect. Second, gender equality and human rights. Foreign feminist policy is about rights, resources, and representation. And we will continue to fight for the rights of all women and girls worldwide, and, important, empower them to exercise their rights. Third, climate change. Climate change is one of the challenges of our time, and we will continue to highlight the nexus between human rights and climate change, and we will actively advocate for the human rights to a healthy environment. Now, what do we do at a national level? And it is true, safeguarding human rights begins at home. We will fight anti-Semitism and racism. We will work hard to improve the situation of refugees and migrants. And we are thankful for the Deutsche Menschenrechtsinstitut and numerous NGOs, as well as the special procedure mandate holders, who constantly remind us where we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, Germany, nice to finally have you with us and continuing here with another round of questions. And again, these are going to be now one by one. So I will read the question. I'll ask the state to which it is targeted to reply directly. And here in the second group of questions, we have a question for Georgia. This is a question from OMCT, and it's asking Georgia, does the government plan to establish a new independent state agency to investigate torture, replacing the state's inspector services that was dissolved in March? So does the government plan to establish a new independent state agency to investigate torture in order to replace the state inspector services that was dissolved in March? Over to Georgia for a reply.
So thank you very much for this question. It's a well-known fact that the inspector's office was the body which was responsible to many issues, and the decision has been taken to establish a new independent mechanism, and we all are well aware about the functions and priorities for those two independent bodies, and I think that the government will take all necessary measures in order to avoid any kind of breach of human rights in the country, and to be in full compliance with international obligations which Georgia undertook in accordance with many very significant international mechanisms, UN, including the UN mechanisms. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a question for Germany. Germany, this is a question from the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa. And they say, Germany pledges to protect and promote children's rights in armed conflicts. In light of the school boycott in 2 regions in Cameroon for the past 6 years, initiated by non-state armed separatist groups, how can this be tabled by Germany in the Human Rights Council? That's a question for Germany. Over to you.
Thank you very much for that question. And of course, it has a place, and a deep and a very important place. What exactly on the ground happens to the those principles and also formulations we support when we are doing both in New York and in Geneva the very important agenda of children in armed conflict. We have been traditionally very active in this field, and I think the events in every part, and I personally have to say I'm not informed about the Cameroon question that was put, but we're certainly able to put that on our Twitter account and answer this question very correctly afterwards, concretely. What I can say already there is it's important to bring the formulations, the resolutions, the principles we uphold on the children in armed conflict issue to implement them on the ground.
Thank you very much indeed, Germany, for that reply. I now have a question for Costa Rica. Costa Rica, this question comes from CEPAZ, the Centro de Justicia y Paz. And the question they ask is, for Costa Rica, how does your state view the support for the renewal of the Venezuela fact-finding mission? And what is your opinion that a country where human rights are violated, such as Venezuela, is also a candidate to the Human Rights Council? That's the end of the question from CEPAZ. That's addressed to Costa Rica. Costa Rica, you have the floor for a reply.
Muchas gracias al Centro.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question. Indeed, as I said before, Costa Rica would like to be a member of the Human Rights Council in order to protect global public goods, which we view as fundamental when it comes into the development of our societies. And here I'm talking about the respect and protection of human rights, obviously, which are global public goods. All countries sovereignly have the right to present their candidacy for the Human Rights Council. We do not have any objection to this. And all countries have a sovereign right to decide on that. With that being said, Costa Rica will not hesitate to use all of the tools presented by the Human Rights Council when it comes to special procedures, resolutions, and the resolutions relating to particular situations in specific countries in order to promote the respect and protection of human rights. But that has to be based on dialogue. We have to make reports, but we can't do this without having a dialogue with these countries. We cannot communicate reports without having a dialogue with countries. So dialogue is really important. It's not just about naming and shaming and accusations. We have to seek solutions together, above all in the current context, which is so complicated. We are facing so many crises which we believed were simply in the past, such as the war in Europe. There's no solution without dialogue. So with regards to human rights, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that we shouldn't condemn others. Of course we have to, but we can't close the door to dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. And now Chile. We have the same question from CEPAZ for you. I'll repeat the question so you can prepare your reply. CEPAZ is asking, how does your state view the support for the renewal of the Venezuela fact-finding mission? And what is your opinion that a country where human rights are violated, such as Venezuela, is also a candidate to the Human Rights Council? That's a question from CEPAZ, and they're directing it now to Chile. Chile,
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question. Chile was a part of the core group that led to the resolution and the fact-finding mission in 2019. And this year, Chile is also part of the core group working on this resolution again. This shows consistency. We use the mechanisms provided by the Council. in terms of human rights, and we would like to accompany them. And we believe that this resolution that will be presented this year will be extremely important in this regard, considering that it was also recognized by the report of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And this is important because it is not just a question of generating reports for the mechanisms and detecting the elements, but also to detect what has an effect, what had an impact. And this will allow to improve the situation of human rights. We believe that this is a solution that can be applied to Venezuela as soon as 2024. And regarding the opinion of Chile for this candidacy, we believe that no one has a perfect record. And we all have our complex situations that need to be assessed by the UN organisms and bodies, and we need to work with all countries. And to bear in mind the hardships that each country is going through. Chile is open to this candidacy and to working with the civil society and other partners to strengthen the human rights record in our country.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. We have a question now which is directed to Belgium, a question for Belgium, and this comes from an organization called 11-11-11, which identifies itself as a coalition of NGOs, unions, movements, and solidarity groups in Flanders. And 11-11-11 asks Belgium, and here's the question: the Human Rights Council decided to discontinue the mandate of the Commission of Inquiry for Burundi, and then to appoint a special rapporteur with a one-year mandate on Burundi. With a lot of uncertainty concerning the continuation of an independent international monitoring body, civil society actors have been urging the renewal of the special rapporteur's mandate. How would Belgium ensure a sustainable monitoring model as a Human Rights Council member? That question for Belgium, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just wanted to underline and refer to the words that Mrs. Kallemar spoke at the opening that really stuck with me, that you have to be prepared as a member to hold others to account. And I think also if you look at the scoreboard of Belgium during our previous mandate, we are a country that are ready to hold others to account. And I also want to refer to what I said in the introduction, that we want to contribute to a council that can fulfill all aspects of its mandate. And we think it of great importance that the council is able to address situations of human rights violations. And I want to recall also that Belgium is a member of the EU, and that the initiative for this resolution on the human rights situation on Burundi and establishing the mandate of the special rapporteur is an EU initiative that Belgium supported, also as an observer. I understand that there's also questions asked about other country situations, and I think what I say now relates also to those other country situations that we're really prepared to hold others to account, but also to continue dialogue with the countries concerned. That's also very important to really continue also the dialogue and discuss concerns, but also maybe possibilities to advance on certain domains in the human rights field.
Thank you very much, madam. We have finally a question in this round for Afghanistan. Question for Afghanistan. This question comes from Forum Asia, which is the Asian Forum for Human Rights and Development. And Forum Asia asks, how can the Afghanistan mission in the UN and its diplomatic representation ensure that they deliver on their commitments for accountability in Afghanistan? That's a question from Foreign Asia for Afghanistan. Afghanistan, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thanks for this question. I think it's a very valid question given the situation in the country. But what I also said during my statement was that electing Afghanistan to the Council will be a pledge, a commitment by international community to keep the issue of deterioration of situation of human rights in Afghanistan on the top. So what the Afghanistan mission here in New York is doing, we are particularly focusing on the situation of human rights and humanitarian situation in the country. And the least which will happen will be, a platform for discussion about Afghanistan, keep pressing on the issues of human rights in Afghanistan, and using the Human Rights Council in its, its best possible under the current circumstances. I think this is what we have done in the past 1 year, even being as an observer. Right now, for example, we are hosting a delegation of Afghan women from all over the world, but including from Kabul. So I think we will provide a platform. We will keep Afghanistan on the focus, and we will participate in all the discussions and activities of the Human Rights Council with an hope that through civil society, we will be able to do, to promote and protect the human rights in the country.
Thank you very much, sir, for that reply. Now we're going to shift into another set of questions. As we said, there were a number of state candidates that either declined to participate or simply didn't reply to the invitation today, but the organizers felt very strongly they too should be subjected to questions, and those questions have been received. They will be posted online. They will be directed to those states who are not with us today, and I'm going to read them now on the record so that we're aware of the questions being put to those states. The first is directed to Algeria, and this question to Algeria comes from Justitia Center for Legal Protection of Human Rights in Algeria. And their question to Algeria is, persons detained in police custody do not benefit from legal assistance in accordance with Article 14 of the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And as such, detention is not subject to judicial review of its legality in accordance with Article 9.4 of the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The question to Algeria, what legislative measures will be undertaken to remedy these violations of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights? That's the end of the question directed at Algeria. A question directed to Morocco comes from the network of the Independent Commission for Human Rights in North Africa, CEDH Africa. And they ask Morocco what measures have been taken to improve the law of 1958 for associations to ensure freedom of speech in Morocco and its alignment with the international human rights standards. That question directed to Morocco. There's a question directed to Sudan, and the question to Sudan comes from Defend Defenders, the East and Horn of Africa Human Rights Defenders Project. And they're asking Sudan, how do the de facto authorities intend to reconcile the fact that Sudan is suspended from the AU and the fact that Sudan is running for Human Rights Council membership while suspended from the AU? In this regard, what immediate steps do the de facto authorities intend to take to restore Sudan's civilian-led government? That question directed to Sudan. There is a question also asked of Bahrain, and the question to Bahrain comes from the Gulf Center for Human Rights. And the Gulf Center asks, in view of Bahrain's desire to join the Human Rights Council, will it make a demonstration of its commitment to set a higher standard of human rights by releasing all prisoners of conscience, including Abdul Hadi al-Khawaja, Abdul Jali al-Singase, and Naji Fatil? These are noted human rights defenders who have been tortured and are serving long prison sentences for their peaceful activism, says the Gulf Center for Human Rights, directing that question to Bahrain. There is a question directed to Bangladesh. It comes from Inclusive Bangladesh, and Inclusive Bangladesh asks, what steps will Bangladesh take to acknowledge the human rights of the LGBTIQ+ community in Bangladesh? That question from Inclusive Bangladesh. There is also a question that's asked of Vietnam. And Vietnam gets this question from the 88 Project. And the 88 Project asks the following. In its note verbal, Vietnam pledged to, quote, engage responsibly in the work of the UN Human Rights Council and to promote the role of the efficiency of the Council with particular attention to the rights of vulnerable groups and the impacts of climate change on the enjoyment of human rights, end quote. The question continues, yet in 2021 to 2022, the government arrested and imprisoned 4 prominent climate activists, Ngoy Thi Can, Dang Din Bak, Mai Phan Loi, and Bak Hoang Duong. I apologize for my pronunciations. The question continues, will the government of Vietnam commit to not arresting any more climate and environmental activists if it is elected to the Human Rights Council? Yes or no, ends the question from the 88 Project to Vietnam. And there's a question here addressed to Venezuela. The question to Venezuela comes from the OMCT, and the OMCT asks, NGOs from Venezuela have denounced reprisals for their participation and cooperation with the UN mechanisms from the state. As a member of the Human Rights Council, how would you guarantee a safe environment for them to freely carry out their work? Will you cooperate as a member of the Human Rights Council with the UN mechanisms, such as fact-finding missions, to investigate human rights violations in countries facing critical human rights situations? That is a question to Venezuela from OMCT. So there you see we have a number of questions for those state candidates who did not appear today. But because we still have some time, we're going to go to round 2, again, in alphabetical order of a group of questions directed to those who are participating today. And the first question is for Afghanistan. And that question is directed to Forum Asia, from Foreign Asia to Afghanistan. And they ask, oh, I think we've got a repeat of that question that's already been answered. So here we have a question for Belgium. I'm sorry, there's a slight difference in that question. So I am going to read that question to Afghanistan. I think the people feeding us the questions have now revised that. I'm patiently waiting for it to finish its formulation in the text. So the first question was the original question of how Afghanistan would, the Afghanistan mission would represent advance human rights when the de facto authorities are in control. I think we've got an answer to that, but there's a second question for Afghanistan. And it is from the Jubilee campaign in the United States. And they ask, does Afghanistan have plans to abolish the death penalty for religious conduct such as apostasy and blasphemy? Even where a moratorium is in place, we are concerned that the presence of laws criminalizing apostasy and blasphemy also embolden non-state actors to commit violence and extrajudicial killings against faith minorities. Afghanistan, a question to you from Jubilee Campaign USA on death penalty for religious conduct. Over to Afghanistan for a reply.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
I think I will not be in a position to honestly to answer this question, given the situation. So I will perhaps defer this. But Afghanistan had a moratorium on the death penalty. I think in the past 10 years, including some very well-known terrorists, nobody have been put into death penalty and death rows. So I think this is the only thing I can say at this stage, which the penalty was not implemented during the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, but under the Taliban, I think it's common practice. And so we're all working perhaps to remove this or to keep the moratorium as long as possible. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. We have in this round another question for Belgium. This comes from OFFGO Cameroon. Question for Belgium is as follows. Belgium pledges to continue its efforts to combat acts of reprisals. At the Human Rights Council 49, Belgium encouraged the Human Rights Council President, Secretariat, and Bureau to follow up on OFFGO Cameroon's case on reprisals and welcome the information from the Human Rights Council member Cameroon about this case. Question to Belgium, does Belgium intend to keep raising these cases if it is elected? In terms of follow-up to Human Rights Council 49, what are the lessons learned? Did you receive encouraging feedback from the Council President, Bureau, Secretariat, and/or from Cameroon? Over to Belgium for a reply to this question from OFFGO Cameroon.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Yes, and indeed, Belgium, together with its partners, notably the Netherlands and Luxembourg, so the Benelux countries, we have started this practice to really make interventions where we call out on individual cases of reprisals taken against civil society actors who engage with the UN representatives and mechanisms in the field of human rights. And we plan to continue our efforts with those two countries to prevent and combat all forms of intimidation and reprisals. And also more broader, as we said that in our pledges, that civic space will be one of our axes. And also in reply to a question from Amnesty that I saw in the chat. We also are considering or looking, we think that there's still room in the Council also where for specific actions that we are convinced that there's still room for to pay attention to a specific group of human rights defenders. So we will continue to raise individual cases, that's for sure.
Thank you very much, Madam. We now have a question which is directed to Chile. Chile, this question comes from Human Rights Watch, and they ask, in a Latin America experiencing an alarming erosion of basic democratic guarantees and the rule of law, how would Chile, as a Human Rights Council member, help to advance democracy and human rights in the region? Chile, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Chile is already doing this as part of the Summit for Democracy and various initiatives connected to human rights and the rule of law. We believe that it is fundamental. And secondly, it is very important to strengthen the institutionalization of human rights. And in this logic, we have a new element in our country connected to the national mechanisms. We have had an interesting path to keep exploring. And we believe that the necessary interdependency between the two is very important. Furthermore, Chile is part of the CDI, i.e. the Initiative Against Torture, and has promoted this outside of the Council and plans to promote it within the Council too. We believe that it is important to be able to accompany countries in order to achieve human rights. We see this in Latin America. This is not new. We have seen an erosion of the rule of law in Latin America. This is known. And we use the opportunity to remind you that we are still working in this region for this goal.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. We have a question now directed to Costa Rica. And the question to Costa Rica is, Latin American countries like Cuba, Nicaragua, El Salvador, and Venezuela are committing human rights violations with impunity and support some countries in the Council who also commit human rights violations. Question continues, if you are elected for 2023 to 25, what will be your position against these regimes and their human rights violations agenda? End of question. That is directed to Costa Rica. Costa Rica, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor moderador.
Thank you very much. I believe that there will be no changes from what Costa Rica has been doing historically within the Council and regional and international levels. We will participate, we will be very vocal in our work for the promotion and the protection of human rights. There is absolutely no doubt that Costa Rica will keep on its historical path to systematically condemn the violations of human rights. At the same time, we would like to insist that we cannot just do that while with one resolution or one condemnation if it does not come with three fundamental elements. First of all, dialogue. We need to keep our doors open to be able to establish dialogues with countries where we believe that there are systematic violations of human rights. Second, I believe that it is very important that the Human Rights Council also realizes and strengthen its work for better actions, for early warning mechanisms as well, to be able to detect situations before they take place. And third, a very strong interaction with the regional systems for the protection of human rights. In the Latin America region, we have an inter-American mechanism which is fundamental for the protection of human rights in our region. I would also like to go back to the question that was asked to Chile earlier on the erosion in Latin America. And yes, there has been an erosion because we have not been able to deliver to the population. So we need to have a change in paradigm in the Human Rights Council. And that means that we have to work on social, economic, and cultural rights, as well as economic rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Sir, we have now a question for Germany. Germany, this question comes to you from Almazan, and their question is, your commitment to ensuring accountability for the atrocities committed in Ukraine, including through the creation of an ad hoc UN Commission of Inquiry, is commendable. Yet, Germany, along with other Western European Council members, has strongly opposed the establishment of a Commission of Inquiry into Israel-Palestine, despite Israel's chronic impunity for its gross violations of international law, some of which amount to war crimes and crimes against humanity, including apartheid. During its renewed Human Rights Council membership, will Germany continue to adopt double standards regarding accountability, or will it shift its approach and support the investigations of the UN Commission of Inquiry in Palestine, Israel-Palestine? That question from Almazan for Germany. Germany, you have the floor for a response.
Thank you very much for this very important question. I do not agree with the hypothesis within this question. And we do communicate very openly with Israel and do not hesitate to be vocal if justified. For instance, when it comes to the settlement policy, and there are no double standards. And just to give you an example, just a couple of weeks ago, I believe in the middle of August, together with Belgium, Denmark, France, Ireland, Italy, the Netherlands, Spain, and Sweden, publicly raised our deep concerns regarding Israel's raids in 6 NGO offices. which took place on August the 18th. And they do constitute a worrying reduction of space for the civil society in the occupied Palestinian territories and are therefore not acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam, for that response. We now have a question which is directed to Georgia. Georgia, this question comes to you from Human Rights Watch, and they ask you, do Georgia's authorities plan to take into consideration the Venice Commission's critical analysis of the hastily adopted surveillance bill? Freedom of communication and privacy are fundamental rights, and any limitations should be narrowly defined and strictly proportionate, says Human Rights Watch. That question for Georgia. Georgia, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this question. It's a very important issue. As you are well aware, Georgia is a young democracy with many challenges, both externally and internally, and 20% of our territory is currently being occupied. And we are doing our best in order to cope with so many challenges, as I already emphasized, we are facing at this stage. The government has a task to, has a responsibility to ensure the protection of human rights, at the same time to cope with existing threats and challenges. And these amendments you just referred to are the fine balance to deal with those two dimensions at the same time. And as I am aware, there is no concrete legal arguments against those amendments. As I already emphasized, Georgia is a democracy. The issue is being considered in the parliament, and then the outcome of this process will be up to the parliament. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you very much, sir. And as we enter the final hour of our discussion, another round of questions is flowing in from participants. Again, I'm going to give them one by one and ask for your brief responses as I address them to you. The first for Kyrgyzstan. And this question for Kyrgyzstan comes from Vuka. And the question is, the government of Kyrgyzstan has recently moved ahead with the implementation of the law on protection from false information, claimed to be aimed at countering the spread of, quote, false information on the internet, and put forward a draft anti-extremism law containing vague wording. In light of the recent arrest of a number of journalists, we fear that both of these laws might be used to unwarrantedly restrict freedom of expression. Can you please share how Kyrgyzstan will ensure that this law is not used to unduly restrict the right to freedom of expression? That is from Vuka. The question is for Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Let's start.
Kyrgyzstan, we're not hearing you.
Oh. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. I would allow myself to start with allegedly arrested journalists. So if Mr. Temirov if it's about Mr. Temirov, journalist Temirov, because I don't know who was supposed to be arrested in this question from Buka. Then this year, January 22, Mr. Temirov was detained for drugs storage and possession, but now he's waiting trial and he's not detained. He's under the travel ban. So this is, I think, point number one. So if Buka talks about arrested journalists being arrested, so then when it comes to Mr. Temirov, and I believe that it's the person who is being meant. Then Mr. Temirov is not under arrest, so he is waiting trial. But currently under the travel ban. Secondly, Article 10 of our Constitution forbids censorship. There is also special law about mass media. There is a peculiarity that internet resources in Kyrgyz Republic, it's not regarded as a mass media. And if I would also allow myself to refer to the Reporters Without Borders NGO. I believe this is NGO which everybody trusts. So currently, Kyrgyzstan is ranked 72 amongst 180, according to the freedom of expression. And as finally, when it comes the law which was signed last August 2021, about defense from the false information, then Kyrgyzstan believes that it was a very delicate compromise between the privacy, dignity of personal privacy and dignity from the one hand, and the freedom of press. So again, let me reiterate, according to our legislation, internet resources is not being regarded as a mass media. But it was a sort of compromise, you see, to find the balance, because libel, defamation, in recent years, it is flooding our internet resources. So it was this sincere attempt to solve this growing problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Sir, can I just say that I think you may be using wireless headset and there is some radio interference. You might be close to another device that's interfering. We heard everything that you said, but just to make you aware. But we did hear your reply and we thank you very much for that. Let me now move to the Maldives. There is a question directed to the Maldives that comes from the Maldivian Democracy Network, MDN. And they asked the Maldives has stated different positions on the death penalty at different platforms. Will you pledge to defer to the moratorium on the death penalty? That question for the Maldives, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you for the question. The Maldives, of course, has maintained an informal moratorium on the death penalty for more than half a century, and we will continue to do so. Article 10 of the Constitution of the Maldives stipulates that Islam shall be the basis of all laws in the country, and the penal code permits the use of the death penalty in cases of premeditated murder and manslaughter, among others. We fully maintain that legal measures relating to the use of death punishment must be rigorously and meticulously examined within the wider judicial framework to ensure that the enforcement of sentence is not arbitrary and it adheres to the commitment of the Maldives under international law. Over the past 2 years, we have taken substantial measures to implement positive and meaningful changes to our judiciary and align our domestic legal instruments with our international obligations. The government of Maldives reiterates its commitment to uphold the formal moratorium on the death penalty. For us, the judicial reform and enhancing legislative mechanisms relating to criminal justice system takes precedence over resuming the death sentence. We also wish to assure our partners and friends in the international community that the current government does not support the arbitrary use of the death penalty in any way or form, and we will continue to uphold the informal moratorium. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. That brings us to a question directed to the Republic of Korea. This comes from the International Service for Human Rights, and they ask, what will the Republic of Korea do as a member of the Council to strengthen civil society participation at the Human Rights Council? Question to the Republic of Korea, what will you do to strengthen civil society participation at the Council? Over to you, Korea.
Thank you very much for the question. And I think I actually wasn't expecting that question. So could I have a couple of more minutes, perhaps in the next round, to think about it and give the answer?
Sure thing.
Thank you.
We'll come back to you on that question then. We have a question here as well for Romania. This comes again from VUCA, and they ask Romania the following. The Romanian Senate, the parliament's upper house, recently approved a legislative draft that aims to prohibit the dissemination by any means of content regarding deviation from the sex and gender assigned at birth, or the glorification of gender reassignment and homosexuality, end quote. Human rights defenders and human rights organizations immediately condemned that bill, calling for the parliament's lower house to reject it. Can you share what steps Romania will take to protect the rights of the LGBTIQ community when it's a member of the Human Rights Council, both in the Council and at home? That question for Romania, and you have the floor.
May I? May I answer from Geneva? I'm sorry.
Certainly.
Hello, I'm Răzvan Rusu, the ambassador in Geneva. And I wanted to intervene here because also I arrived from Strasbourg, from the Council of Europe, and I have to mention, as a general attitude, Romania is supporting any promotion of the principle of non-discrimination based on grounds of sexual orientation and gender identity. This is the arch over our actions and beliefs. Also, so there are two tiers, the international one and the national one, and the question refers to the internal one. But anyway, let me exhaust the international tier. We just joined this year the Council of Europe. We entered a voluntary process, which is at the basis of the recommendation of the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe to promote the principle of non-discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. So we are active in this part, and we support we reject any kind of discrimination based also on this. Now, on the internal tier, well, the question refers to the first chamber of the parliament, the first, which is not a decisional one. Yeah, it is an appeal, it's true, of the civil society to the Chamber of Deputies to reject this or to amend this legislative draft. It's the first step, I should say, in the process of checks and balances. Yeah, so there are so many levels through which such a draft will not go. Furthermore, this June 2022, we enhanced the law on combating the hate speech, including the one related to sexual orientation and so on. So, and that's under the criminal law. We increased the punishments with imprisonment from 6 months up to 3 years. When this is not sanctioned under the administrative law, also we have sanctions and we have a special body which is dealing with this. So I think we have the entire, we are encompassing everything nationally. And of course, I have to say, and this is public, we have officials in my country which are being sanctioned because of this kind of attitude sometimes. So that's a process which should be scrutinized permanently. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Much appreciated for that. Let's now go to a question to South Africa. South Africa, this question comes from Franciscans International, and they ask, what are South Africa's plans to advance the agenda on business and human rights at the Human Rights Council? Business and human rights at the Human Rights Council. Question to South Africa. South Africa, you have the floor for a reply.
My apologies. Can you please repeat the question for me? My apologies.
Yes, Franciscans International is asking you, what are South Africa's plans to advance the agenda on business and human rights at the Human Rights Council? Over to you, madam.
Thank you. The agenda to advance business and human rights at the Council. I would just address the question to how South Africa has addressed the rights of people with regard to how business should address the rights of people. And we will come back to you fully with how we intend to address this issue at the Human Rights Council. But overall, South Africa is quite focused on ensuring that the business community in South Africa has full respect for human rights of employees, of people in general. There are certain sectors in our society, in particular, where there is focus to make sure that they align with the whole spirit of respecting human rights in South Africa. In particular, the security sector, companies that are operating in that sector. But generally also South African companies that do business not only in South Africa, but in the entire continent. The government has gone to great extent in establishing codes of good practices for South African companies wherever they operate. And that will include companies in various sectors in the private sector. But as to how we will pursue that in the Human Rights Council, we will get back to that and inform you. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, very much indeed for that reply. Well, that is going to conclude this round of questions. So I'm going to give a chance to South Korea again, back to the Republic of Korea, to answer the question put to it by the International Service for Human Rights, who I will remind you were asking the Republic of Korea, what will the Republic of Korea do when it's a member to strengthen civil society participation at the Human Rights Council? Republic of Korea, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. And I'm sorry I couldn't answer the first time around. I wasn't expecting that question. But again, of course, engaging with the civil society is extremely important. And especially now, given that civil society and the private sector, they have all the resources, both in terms of technology and then also in particular the expertise of what's happening at the local level. And at the end of the day, we feel that it's the civil society and the local communities that also understand what the solutions can be to some of the gaps in the human rights situation and also some of the violations that are happening. So we intend to work very closely with civil society, and which is what we're already doing outside of the Human Rights Council. In terms of the two resolutions that we're leading on local governments and on digital technologies, actually we've been working with the civil society and the academia to come up with the appropriate elements for the resolution. And this is something that we intend to do more closely when we do become a member of the Human Rights Council again. So thank you very much for the question.
Thank you, Madam, for that reply. Much appreciated. That exhausts that round of questions as well. But as always, we are not letting those member states who did not attend today off the hook. So I'm going to read on the record the questions that are put to them and that will be posted online as well. The first is a question directed to Algeria, and it comes from the Ligue Algérienne des Droits de l'Homme, LADDH. And they ask, today it was announced that the visit of the Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Assembly, Peaceful Assembly and Demonstration and Association was postponed. The visit was scheduled for 12 September, but has been postponed to 2023. They say for the 9th time. How can a country be a candidate for the Human Rights Council when it turns its back on its commitments in terms of respect for human rights and working with the human rights mechanisms? The government has even gone so far as to prevent defenders from traveling and leaving the country to take part in a pre-session of the Human Rights Council, which will examine the situation of Algeria next November under the UPR. That question directed to Algeria. There is also a question directed to Morocco in this round, and it comes from the Association Américaine des Juristes, AAJ, and they say, regarding the implementation of decisions and recommendations of UN mechanisms in recent years, several mechanisms, committees, and special procedures have issued decisions and/or recommendations that the Moroccan government refuses to implement, including on torture and reprisals. Does the Kingdom of Morocco intend to promptly open independent investigations to establish the truth? Is the Kingdom of Morocco willing to grant access to detention centers to the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights and the ICRC? That directed to Morocco. A question directed to the Sudan comes from Redress. And Redress says, Sudan has previously indicated that it would ratify CEDAW. When will Sudan do so? And will Sudan commit to ratification without reservation that would defeat the object and purpose of CEDAW, that for Sudan? A question is also directed to Bahrain. And this question to Bahrain comes from Human Rights Watch, who ask, will the Bahraini government ensure the independent and impartial investigation into all allegations of torture or ill treatment? That to Bahrain. A question to Bangladesh comes from Inclusive Bangladesh, and they ask, will Bangladesh revise its gazette to acknowledge all genders through other genders instead of Hijra gender to accommodate all genders? A question to Vietnam comes from Vietnamese Canadian Federation, or VCF, and they ask, Vietnam ratified ILO Convention 98 on workers' right to collective bargaining, but only workers' representative organizations are allowed, not actual trade unions. What will Vietnam do to live up to its commitment? Finally, a question to Venezuela from Human Rights Watch. Human Rights Watch says, Venezuela did not show up at today's event. What can we expect of a government that's responsible for serious human rights abuses and persecutes critics and opponents as a member of a body intended to promote human rights? That from Human Rights Watch, directed to Venezuela. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have exhausted as many questions as we can accommodate, both for those who have participated here, have been very generous with their time, and also for those state candidates who have not arrived here. I really want to thank all of the candidates here most sincerely for the responses to these questions. And now I'd like to give the floor to Ambassador Oliver Mais, who is the permanent representative of Luxembourg at the United Nations here in New York, to make some brief closing remarks on behalf of our co-sponsors. Ambassador Oliver Mais, you now have the floor.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I hope that you can hear me well. Madame Calamar, dear colleagues, in the name of Argentina and Luxembourg, I would just like to thank you. I'd like to thank the International Service for Human Rights and Amnesty International for the organization of this virtual event on the commitments of the candidate countries to the Human Rights Council for the mandate 2023-2025. It's a real honor for Luxembourg to have co-sponsored this event with Argentina. This event has been established as an important meeting within the context of human rights on the international stage. I would like to congratulate all of the states which have taken the opportunity to present their commitments and priorities as candidates to the Human Rights Council. As we know, the elections will take place next month. I would also like to thank the representatives of Afghanistan, South Africa, Germany, Belgium, Chile, Costa Rica, Georgia, Kyrgyzstan, Maldives. The interpreter can no longer hear the speaker. The interpreting service will resume when the connection of the speaker has been re-established. Thank you.
I think we'll just give the ambassador a moment to reconnect. Hopefully they'll manage to do so on that side. If you'll bear with us for just a moment, we do want to give our co-sponsor every opportunity to reconnect. Just another 30 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, and then we will hopefully be able to proceed.
Désolé, je crois que nous avons été...
I do apologize. I think that the connection was interrupted.
Je vous en prie, monsieur.
I do apologize. I was just quoting the resolution of the General Assembly of the United Nations, which established the Human Rights Council, and which states that the member states elect the members of the council whilst taking into account the contributions that each candidate has made to the promotion and defense of human rights, as well as the commitments that they have made voluntarily with this in mind. Our exchanges today have allowed us to share the commitments of the candidate states and to delve into the explanations of their priorities and ambitions. This discussion has also allowed the candidate countries to be more precise with regards to how they are going to promote human rights and fight against human rights violations. We have heard a lot of interesting information about the reinforcement of the work of the Council and the significance of what it is to belong to the Human Rights Council when it comes to promoting and defending human rights. And we've heard a lot about this on the national level and on the international level. Luxembourg is delighted that many candidates expressed their support for an efficient participation of the civil society with regards to the work of the Human Rights Council. The NGOs play an essential role. We often talk about this. They play an essential role because they contribute with their expertise on the ground. They contribute, therefore, to the work of the United Nations. An inclusive dialogue with the member states, with civil society actors, both on the national and international stage, and with the representatives of the United Nations system is really essential when it comes to accomplishing the work of the Human Rights Council effectively. And we are delighted to be able to pursue and continue this dialogue with all member states. Before giving you the floor again, Mr. Moderator, to conclude the event, allow me briefly to warmly wish the best of luck to the candidates within the context of the elections, which will open next month in New York at the seat of the United Nations. We also wish all the best of luck to the candidate countries which will be elected. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for those closing remarks, for your co-sponsorship of this event, and for ending it on such an excellent note. Well, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we do hope that this discussion has helped all to gain a better knowledge and understanding of what is the vision for membership and the human rights commitments of some of the candidates for the Human Rights Council elections. We know from past experience that this event has helped to promote trust between council candidates, states, civil society, and the UN, and has contributed to strengthening international dialogue on human rights. As we continue to address the challenges confronting human rights in our time and the challenges confronting multilateralism, not least in the context of this global pandemic, we hope that this year's exchange has offered the same inspiration and has enhanced the spirit of cooperation. Again, I want to thank all the candidates for their time and their willingness to engage transparently on these human rights issues. I want to thank the audience for your engaged participation. I want to thank the organizers, the International Service for Human Rights, Amnesty International, our co-sponsors, Luxembourg and Argentina, and all of you for participating here today. You can continue the conversation online with hashtag HRC pledging, and we'll see you there. Thank you all very much and goodbye.
Recording stopped.